The great assembly hall of Harmony Prime had never been so quiet. 1,000 different beings sat in their designated seats, each representing their home worlds across the galaxy. The silence felt heavy, like a thick blanket covering everyone present. Ambassador Thel Vox stood at the central platform. His tall, blue-scaled form seemed smaller today, burdened by the weight of terrible news. He touched the control panel, and a holographic image appeared above the assembly, a beautiful green and blue planet called Viridios. "Honored representatives," Thel Vox began, his voice steady but sad. "The celestial anchor of Viridios is failing." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Everyone knew what this meant. The celestial anchor was an ancient machine, built 10,000 years ago by a long-gone civilization called the Progenitors. This massive structure kept Viridios's atmosphere stable and safe. Without it, the planet would become completely uninhabitable within 30 days. 10 billion people lived on Viridios: farmers, teachers, children, families. All of them would need to leave their homes. But there was nowhere in the galaxy that could accept so many refugees so quickly. "Can it be repaired?" asked Commander Brix, a Korvath whose rock-like body gleamed under the chamber's lights. The Korvath were known throughout the galaxy as the strongest beings. They could crush steel with their bare hands and survive pressures that would flatten most starships. "Yes," Thel Vox replied, bringing up another image. "But there is a significant problem. The anchor must be manually recalibrated from inside its core. The journey to reach that core is extremely dangerous." Chief Engineer Velmora of the Erythians floated forward. Her cloud-like form shimmered with concern. "What are the specific challenges?" The Erythians could exist in almost any atmosphere, traveling through toxic gases and extreme weather without protection. Thel Vox displayed the data. The path to the core experiences gravity that changes constantly, sometimes crushing, sometimes absent. Temperature shifts from freezing cold to burning heat within seconds. There are electromagnetic pulses that destroy most technology. And the atmospheric pressure varies so wildly that it would tear apart anything rigid. The assembly members looked at each other nervously. These were not ordinary challenges. Commander Brix stood up, his massive form impressive and confident. "I volunteer. My people can withstand tremendous pressure. I will recalibrate the anchor." The engineers examined the data carefully. Finally, Velmora spoke gently. "Honored Commander, the temperature variations would crack even your strong form. The rapid heating and cooling would shatter stone itself." Brix sat down slowly, disappointment clear on his features. Velmora stepped forward next. "Then, I shall go. We Erythians thrive in hostile atmospheres. No weather can harm us." The chief scientist, a Nexari named Prime 7, shook his metallic head. "The gravity fluctuations would disperse your form, honored engineer. Your molecular structure requires consistency. These changes happen too rapidly for you to adapt." One by one, the greatest champions of the galaxy stood and offered themselves. Each time, the experts explained why even these remarkable beings could not survive the journey. The Zenthari, who could see in complete darkness, could not handle the electromagnetic interference. The Quillians, who could survive in the vacuum of space, could not manage the extreme pressures. The Morphids, who could change their shape at will, could not adapt quickly enough to the temperature shifts. After 2 hours of failed volunteers, despair settled over the assembly like fog. Thel Vox looked at the gathered representatives with sadness in his eyes. "Is there truly no one strong enough to save Viridios?" The silence returned, heavier than before. In the back row, in a small seat designed for medium-sized species, sat Dr. Sarah Chen. She was Earth's representative, a planet that had joined the Galactic Council only 15 years ago. Humans were considered one of the weaker species in the galaxy. They had no special abilities, No remarkable strength, no unique adaptations. They were just ordinary beings who had recently developed space travel. Sarah had been listening carefully to every presentation, taking notes on her tablet. She had watched the greatest champions of the galaxy admit defeat, and she had been thinking. Slowly, she raised her hand. Several nearby representatives noticed and whispered to each other. One of the Korvath delegates chuckled softly. What could a human possibly offer when beings far more capable had failed? Thelvox noticed her raised hand. Yes, Dr. Chen? Do you have a question? Sarah stood up. She was much smaller than most beings in the room, dressed in a simple blue uniform, with Earth's symbol on the shoulder. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical style, and her brown eyes were calm. Ambassador Thelvox, I would like to volunteer for this mission, she said clearly. The chuckling spread through several sections of the assembly. It was not meant to be cruel. Most delegates simply could not understand how this could be serious. If the mighty Korvath could not survive, if the adaptive Erythians could not manage, how could a fragile human possibly succeed? But Thelvox did not laugh. He had worked with Dr. Chen for several years and knew she was not someone who spoke without thinking. Dr. Chen, Darren, he said respectfully, please help us understand. If our strongest and most adapted species cannot survive this journey, how would you? Sarah smiled. It was a warm, gentle expression that somehow made her seem more confident, not less. Because, Ambassador, I think we have been asking the wrong question. Growed. 2. The assembly grew quiet again, but this time with curiosity instead of despair. We keep asking who is strongest, or who is most adapted, Sarah continued. But maybe the question should be, who can adapt the most during the journey itself? She walked down to the central platform. Thelvox gestured for her to approach. Sarah connected her tablet to the main display. May I show you the human approach? She asked. Thelvox nodded. Please do. Sarah's fingers moved across the control panel, and new images filled the holographic display. The assembly leaned forward with interest. Every species here has approached this problem based on their natural strengths, Sarah explained. The Korvath thought about pressure resistance. The Erythians considered atmospheric adaptation. The Nexari focused on technological solutions. Each approach was excellent, but each relied on one primary advantage. She brought up a diagram showing the path to the anchor's core, divided into different colored sections. The journey has multiple stages, each with different challenges. No single advantage can handle all of them. But what if we did not try to handle all of them the same way? If you Menderzi, all my lev. If you Menderzi, my levin, I-14 Saf. Commander Brix rumbled thoughtfully. I mean, we create modular equipment, Sarah said, highlighting different sections. Equipment that can be changed, adjusted, and replaced during the descent. When gravity increases, I switch to pressure-resistant gear. When temperature spikes, I activate cooling systems. When those systems overheat, I have backups ready. Humans are not the best at any one thing, but we are very good at changing our approach when circumstances change. Velmora's cloudy form brightened with understanding. You would prepare for continuous adaptation, rather than perfect resistance. Exactly. Sarah nodded. I have studied Earth's history. Humans survived not because we were the strongest or fastest creatures on our planet. We survived because when our environment changed, we changed our methods. We learned. We adjusted. We found new ways. Prime 7, the Nexari scientist, processed this information. This would require contributions from many species. No single technology could provide all the solutions you need. Sarah smiled again. That is exactly right, and that is exactly what I am requesting. I need help from everyone. The assembly stirred with surprise. A mission like this was usually considered a solo achievement, a test of one species' superiority. Sarah was suggesting something completely different. Over the next 3 days, Sarah met with engineers, craftspeople, and technicians from dozens of species. She did not ask for their champions or their finest warriors. She asked for the people who built things, who solved practical problems every day. In a workshop on Harmony Prime, a team began assembling unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Young Korvath engineers contributed pressure-resistant materials that could compress without breaking. Erythian scientists shared atmospheric sensors that could predict temperature changes seconds before they happened. Nexari technicians provided diagnostic tools that could operate in short, powerful bursts, even when electromagnetic pulses disrupted normal systems. A young Korvath named Zixkal became particularly involved. He was smaller than most Korvath, considered weak by his people's standards. While other Korvath lifted heavy materials with ease, Zix struggled. He had always felt inadequate, like he did not belong among his strong people. But Sarah noticed something special about Zix. He asked questions. He wanted to understand not just what to build, but why and how. He made connections between different technologies that others missed. Zix, Sarah said one evening as they reviewed designs together. You see patterns that others do not notice. That is a different kind of strength. Zix's stone-like face showed surprise. But I am not strong like other Korvath. I cannot lift what they lift. Strength has many forms, Sarah replied. Your people are physically powerful, and that is wonderful. But you have the strength to admit when you do not know something, to ask for help, to learn from others. Those are strengths too. This conversation changed something in Zix. He began to work with new confidence, coordinating between different engineering teams, translating technical concepts so that species with different ways of thinking could understand each other. Sarah's training began in a massive simulation facility. The technicians created an environment that mimicked the conditions she would face. But Sarah's approach to training surprised everyone. She failed, deliberately and repeatedly. She would enter the simulation, attempt a task, and let the equipment malfunction. Then, she would practice solving the problem with limited resources. She trained herself to stay calm when systems broke down, to think clearly when everything went wrong. Why do you practice failure? Asked a Zenthari observer. On Earth, we have a saying, Sarah explained. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. Things will go wrong. They always do. If I only practice when everything works perfectly, I will panic when reality does not match my expectations. But if I practice solving problems, adapting to failure, then I will be ready for anything. Oh so. The observers began to understand. Other species trained their champions to be perfect, to never fail. Sarah was training to fail well, to recover quickly, to keep going when plans fell apart. Zix became Sarah's primary communication coordinator. He would monitor her progress from the station, managing data from multiple sources. Sarah taught him how to synthesize information from different species, how to make quick decisions when circumstances changed. You are going to be excellent at this, Sarah told him. You have been preparing your whole life. How? Zix asked, confused. You have always felt different from other Korvath, yes? You have had to think about how to work in a world designed for being stronger than you. That means you already know how to adapt, how to find creative solutions. You just did not realize it was a strength. Zix felt something warm spread through his chest, pride, perhaps, or hope. For the first time, being different did not feel like a weakness. The day before Sarah's departure, the entire assembly gathered for a ceremony. Thelvox presented her with a suit covered in patches, small symbols from every species that had contributed to her equipment. Dr. Chen, he said formally, you carry with you the collective wisdom of the galaxy. May it keep you safe. Sarah touched each patch gently. I will not be alone down there. she said. "Every one of you will be with me. Your knowledge, your creativity, your hope. Together, we are strong enough." She looked at Zix, who stood in the crowd, and smiled. He smiled back, his rough stone features somehow gentle. The next morning, Sarah boarded her shuttle. As it lifted off from Harmony Prime, millions across the galaxy watched their screens. A human was attempting what the strongest beings in known space could not do. But she would not do it alone. Sarah's shuttle approached Viridios, and through the viewport, she could see why this planet was so precious. Swirling clouds of green and gold danced across the atmosphere. 3 moons hung in the sky like pearls. Even from orbit, she could see cities dotted across the continents, their lights twinkling like stars on the ground. "Beginning descent," Sarah reported calmly. Her voice transmitted to Harmony Prime, where the entire Galactic Council watched on massive screens. Millions more watched from their homes across 1,000 worlds. The descent pod detached from the shuttle with a soft click. It was an unusual design, not sleek and elegant like most galactic technology, but modular and practical. Different sections could be swapped out or reconfigured. It looked almost awkward, but Sarah had learned that sometimes awkward and flexible was better than beautiful and rigid. All systems functioning normally. Zixkal's voice came through her communication device. He sat in the command center on Harmony Prime, surrounded by monitors showing data from Sarah's pod. "Atmospheric entry in 30 seconds, Dr. Chen." "Thank you, Zix," Sarah replied. "Ready when the planet is." The pod entered Viridios's upper atmosphere, and immediately the ride became rough. The failing celestial anchor was causing instabilities, wind patterns that should not exist, energy surges that rippled through the air like waves on water. Sarah narrated everything she experienced. "Experiencing turbulence now. The atmospheric sensors from the Arithian team are working perfectly. I can see the energy patterns forming before they reach me." On Harmony Prime, Velmora listened with pride. Her people's contribution was already proving valuable. As the pod descended deeper, the first major challenge appeared. The gravity began to fluctuate wildly. One moment Sarah felt light as a feather. The next moment an invisible hand pressed her down into her seat with crushing force. "Activating Korvath pressure stabilizers," Sarah announced. The systems hummed to life, creating a protective field around her body. For a few minutes, everything worked beautifully. Then, warning lights began flashing. The stabilizers were overheating. "Zix, the stabilizers are running too hot," Sarah said, her voice still calm. "They were designed for constant pressure, but these fluctuations are making them work harder than expected." On Harmony Prime, several Korvath engineers looked worried. Commander Brix leaned forward, concerned. But Sarah was already adapting. "Switching to pulse mode. Instead of running continuously, I will activate them in short bursts, timed with the gravity surges. That should give them time to cool between uses." She manually adjusted the controls, creating a rhythm on during high gravity, off during low gravity. It was like breathing, she thought. Not constant tension, but a pattern of effort and rest. "That is brilliant," Zix said with admiration. "You just invented a new operating mode." "Not invented," Sarah corrected gently. The temperature began to change next. Sarah's instruments showed the outside temperature, dropping rapidly. -50 degrees, -70, -100. The pod's hull creaked as the cold bit into it. Then, just as suddenly, the temperature spiked. 20 degrees, 50 degrees, 100 and rising. The thermal systems struggled to keep up with such extreme changes. Sarah felt sweat on her forehead, but she kept her breathing steady. "The primary thermal suit is not handling these swings well," she reported. "Implementing backup plan." She reached into a storage compartment and pulled out additional insulation layers. These were not high-tech, just simple materials that could trap heat or reflect it away. While the pod shook around her, Sarah carefully assembled a secondary protective layer, working from designs she and the engineering team had prepared for exactly this situation. "How did you know to prepare that?" asked a Zenthari delegate watching from the council chamber. Thelvox smiled. She did not know. She simply prepared for many possibilities. That is the human way. As Sarah worked, she talked. Not about technical details, but about ordinary things. "My daughter Emma turns 8 next week," she said, while sealing insulation seams. "She wants a telescope for her birthday. She loves looking at stars and wondering who lives there. I promised I would bring her a star chart from Harmony Prime." Somehow, hearing about her daughter made Sarah seem braver, not weaker. She was not a superhero from stories. She was a mother, a scientist, a regular person doing an extraordinary thing. Zix's voice came through again. "Dr. Chen, we are detecting communication interference ahead. The electromagnetic pulses are stronger than predicted." "Understood," Sarah replied. "Do we have the workaround ready?" There was a pause. The Nixari communication systems were failing faster than expected. Prime 7 and his team scrambled to find a solution, but the pulses were too chaotic. Then Zix spoke up. "Wait, what if we use a different frequency? The Arithians use sound-wave communication in atmospheres. It would not be affected by electromagnetic interference." "Oh." Velmora's form brightened. "Yes. We can convert the signals. It will be slower, but it will work." Within minutes, the team implemented Zix's solution. He had taken knowledge from 2 different species and combined them in a new way. "Zix, that was your idea?" Sarah asked. "Yes," he said, sounding almost surprised at himself. "Excellent thinking. You just saved our communication link. Thank you." Zix felt warmth spread through his stone body. He had contributed something important. He had been strong in his own way. Sarah reached the halfway point of her descent. The instruments showed she was right on schedule. She took a scheduled rest period, floating in a moment of reduced gravity. From a small container, she pulled out a sandwich simple food from Earth. Nothing fancy. "Taking my lunch break now," she announced with a small laugh. Across the galaxy, beings smiled. This human ate sandwiches while falling through one of the most dangerous environments known to science. Through her viewport, Sarah suddenly saw something extraordinary. The celestial anchor's energy was creating light patterns in the atmosphere, cascades of blue and gold and green, swirling like paintings in the sky. It was beautiful beyond words. "Are you seeing this?" Sarah whispered. She adjusted her camera to share the view with everyone watching. The assembly chamber fell silent as they witnessed the beauty. This was what they were trying to save, not just lives, but wonder. Sarah's pod continued its descent, passing through layers of churning energy. The celestial anchor was now visible below her, a massive structure that looked like a crystal flower blooming in the heart of the planet. Its petals of light were flickering, unstable, like a candle flame about to go out. "Approaching the outer core region," Sarah reported. "All systems are holding. I estimate 20 minutes until I reach the recalibration chamber." On Harmony Prime, the assembled delegates watched with hope. Sarah had overcome every challenge so far. Perhaps she would actually succeed. Then, everything changed. A massive electromagnetic pulse erupted from the anchor, much larger than anything the sensors had predicted. The wave of energy swept through Sarah's pod like an invisible storm. Screens went dark. Systems shut down. Emergency lights flickered on, bathing everything in red. "Sarah!" Zix's voice came through, filled with concern. "What happened? We lost most of your telemetry." Sarah checked her instruments with shaking hands. The news was not good. "The navigation system is completely dead," she said, working to keep her voice steady. "I have basic flight controls and life support." But I cannot map my position anymore. R. The assembly chamber erupted in worried conversations. Without navigation, Sarah could not find the precise location where she needed to go. The anchor's core was a maze of energy conduits and chambers. One wrong turn and she could become hopelessly lost, or miss the narrow time window for recalibration completely. Commander Brick stood up. "We must send a rescue team immediately." "There is no time," Thelvox said quietly. By the time a rescue team could reach her, the window would be closed. Viridios would be lost. Sarah floated in her damaged pod, looking at the flickering red lights. For just a moment, fear touched her heart. She was alone, deep in a dangerous place, with broken equipment. It would be so easy to give up, to call for rescue, to say she had tried her best. Then she thought of Emma, her daughter, looking up at the stars. She thought of the 10 billion people on Viridios who were counting on her. She thought of Zix, who had learned that being different could be a strength. "I am not giving up," Sarah said firmly. "I need help. Everyone who can hear me, I need your help, right now." The simple honesty in her words silenced the worried conversations. Sarah was not pretending to be strong. She was admitting she needed others. And somehow, that made her seem stronger. "Zix," Sarah said, "can you coordinate information from all the different species? I need everyone's unique perspective." Zix felt nervous energy run through him. This was an enormous responsibility. But Sarah trusted him. "Yes, Dr. Chen, I can do that." Sarah explained her plan. "I still have basic sensors. I can detect pressure, temperature, energy signatures, and atmospheric composition. But I do not know how to interpret this data to navigate. Each species here has different ways of sensing the world. If everyone shares their knowledge, maybe together we can create a new kind of map." It was an unusual idea, but the delegates understood immediately. They began offering their expertise. Commander Brick spoke first. "The Korvath can sense pressure patterns. We navigate underground by feeling how pressure flows through rock. Send me your pressure readings." "Dr. Chen." Velmora floated forward. "Erythians can read atmospheric currents like you read books. Give me your atmospheric data. I can tell you which way the energy is flowing." Prime 7's metallic voice joined in. "Nexari can analyze electromagnetic signatures. Even without your main computer, I can triangulate your position using the energy patterns you are detecting." One by one, species offered their knowledge. The Zenthari could interpret tiny variations in radiation. The Quillians understood gravitational eddies. A small morphid scientist recognized patterns in temperature fluctuations that matched ancient maps. Young Zixcal found himself at the center of it all. Data poured in from Sarah's pod. Advice came from dozens of species. Each piece of information was valuable, but they were all different formats, different ways of understanding reality itself. This was what Zix had been preparing for his whole life. Being smaller and weaker had taught him to listen, to learn from others, to find connections instead of forcing solutions. His fingers moved across multiple control panels, combining data streams that had never been combined before. "Dr. Chen," Zix said, his voice growing confident, "I am creating a hybrid navigation system. It uses Korvath pressure maps, Erythian flow analysis, and Nexari triangulation together. It is not like any navigation system that has ever existed, but I think it will work." 9. "Send it to me," Sarah said. Information flowed from Harmony Prime to Sarah's pod. On her emergency display screen, a strange new kind of map appeared. It showed the path ahead not as a simple line, but as a combination of pressure flows, atmospheric currents, and energy signatures all at once. It was confusing at first, but as Sarah studied it, she began to understand. "This is beautiful," she whispered. "It is like seeing the world through 1,000 different eyes at the same time." She adjusted her pod's course based on the hybrid map. The Korvath data told her where the pressure was stable enough to travel. The Erythian analysis showed her which currents would carry her safely. The Nexari calculations revealed the shortest path. Sarah navigated through the maze of the anchor's structure, calling out her readings so the team could continuously update her map. Pressure increasing on my left side. Temperature dropping ahead. Energy signature changing to blue-green spectrum. On Harmony Prime, the engineering teams worked together like musicians in an orchestra. Each species contributed their part, and Zix conducted them all, weaving their different knowledge into a unified whole. Turn 15 degrees to port, Zix guided. Follow the warm current. There is an opening ahead. Sarah followed the instructions, and the pod slipped through a narrow passage. The walls glowed with ancient symbols, markings left by the progenitors who had built this place. I see the core chamber, Sarah announced. I am almost there. The chamber appeared before her, a vast, spherical space where reality seemed to bend and twist. At the center floated the recalibration mechanism, a crystalline structure of impossible complexity, glowing with fading light. Sarah checked her chronometer. She had 28 minutes before the window closed. Sarah guided her pod into the core chamber and anchored it to a stabilization point. Through the viewport, she could see the recalibration mechanism floating in the center, a crystalline structure covered in symbols and interfaces that glowed with weak, flickering light. I am at the mechanism, Sarah reported, preparing to exit the pod. She put on her helmet and checked all her equipment one final time. The suit she wore was a patchwork of contributions from across the galaxy. Korvath materials, Erythian sensors, Nexari power cells, and dozens of other components. She looked at the patches on her shoulder, each one representing a species that had helped her reach this moment. The airlock opened, and Sarah stepped out into the chamber. The gravity here was strange, pulling her in multiple directions at once. She activated magnetic boots and walked carefully toward the floating mechanism. Up close, it was even more complex than the images had shown. The crystalline surface was covered in thousands of symbols, the language of the progenitors, the ancient beings who had built the celestial anchor 10,000 years ago. I am at the mechanism, Sarah said. But there is a problem. These symbols and controls were designed for the progenitors. Their hands, their bodies, were completely different from any modern species. I am not sure how to operate this. On Harmony Prime, linguists and historians rushed forward. They pulled up every piece of data they had about the progenitors. Ancient texts, archaeological findings, mathematical theories, everything that might help translate the instructions. A Kryn linguist named Thora noticed something. These symbols follow a mathematical progression. They are not just words, they are equations. An Erythian historian remembered a similar pattern found on another progenitor site. The equations describe physical movements. Each symbol tells you where to touch and how to move the crystal. A human archaeologist from Earth recognized something else. The sequence follows the Fibonacci spiral. It is a pattern found throughout nature. The progenitors used natural mathematics. The pieces came together across light years. Thousands of beings contributed knowledge. A word here, a mathematical insight there, a historical reference, a scientific principle. Zix coordinated it all, translating the combined wisdom into instructions Sarah could follow. Dr. Chen, Zix said, we have decoded the first sequence. Touch the blue crystal at the top, then rotate it 1/4 turn clockwise. Then touch the 3 smaller crystals in the order we are sending to your display. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she reached for the first crystal. It was smooth and warm under her gloved fingers. She rotated it carefully, and it moved with a soft musical tone. The mechanism responded, its light growing slightly brighter. It is working, Sarah said with relief. For the next 20 minutes, Sarah performed a delicate dance. Her movements combined techniques from multiple species. She used the precise touch of human surgery, the steady pressure of Korvath stone shaping, the flowing motions of Erythian energy work, and the calculated precision of Nexari engineering. Each crystal she touched sang with a different note. Together, they created a harmony that grew stronger as the recalibration progressed. But halfway through the sequence, Sarah's tired hands made a small mistake. She touched a crystal too hard, and it rotated too far. Alarm sounds echoed through the chamber. The mechanism's light flickered dangerously. Sarah's heart pounded. I made an error. The sequence is disrupted. For a moment, panic threatened to overwhelm her. She had come so far, worked so hard, and one small mistake might ruin everything. Then, Zix's calm voice came through her communication device. Dr. Chen, you taught me something important. You said that mistakes are just information. They tell us what needs to be corrected. The alarm is telling you exactly what is wrong. You can fix this. Sarah took a deep breath. Zix was right. She examined the mechanism carefully, looking for what had changed. There, one crystal was out of alignment with the others. The solution was simple. She gently rotated it back, listening for the correct musical note. The alarm stopped. The light stabilized. Sarah continued the sequence. Thank you, Zix, she said softly. I needed that reminder. With 5 minutes remaining, Sarah completed the final movement. She placed her hands on 2 large crystals and gently brought them together. They touched with a sound, like a bell ringing across water. The celestial anchor responded immediately. Energy surged through the mechanism, flowing out into the massive structure surrounding them. The flickering light became steady and strong. The unstable pulses smoothed into gentle, rhythmic waves. Through the viewport of her pod, Sarah watched as Viridios's atmosphere began to clear. The violent energy storms calmed. The dangerous fluctuations settled into peaceful patterns. The planet was healing. Recalibration complete, Sarah announced. The celestial anchor is stable. The assembly chamber on Harmony Prime erupted in celebration. Beings of 1,000 different species cheered together. Commander Brix lifted young Zix onto his massive shoulders, and the small Korvath laughed with joy. Velmora's cloudy form sparkled with happiness. Prime 7's usually calm voice carried unmistakable pride. Sarah's journey back to the surface was triumphant. Her pod rose through Viridios's now calm atmosphere, while the planet's grateful population watched from below. When she finally emerged into space, a fleet of ships from Harmony Prime was waiting to escort her home. The docking bay was filled with delegates when Sarah's shuttle arrived. As she stepped out, still wearing her patchwork suit, Zix rushed forward. He stopped just in front of her, suddenly shy. Sarah smiled and opened her arms. Zix hugged her awkwardly, a small stone being, embracing a soft human. It looked strange, but it felt right. The formal ceremony took place in the great assembly hall. Thelvox stood at the central platform, his blue scales gleaming with pride. Dr. Sarah Chen, he announced. You were asked if you were strong enough to save Viridios. Please, share with us what you learned. Sarah stood before the gathered galaxy. She looked small and ordinary next to the mighty beings surrounding her. But her voice carried clearly. You asked if anyone was strong enough, she said. The truth is, no one was not alone. I did not save Viridios. We saved it together. Every species here contributed knowledge, creativity, and hope. I was simply the hands that you all guided. The assembly fell silent as understanding washed over them. Commander Brix spoke, his deep voice thoughtful. For millennia, we Korvath have believed that strength means lifting the heaviest weights, enduring the greatest pressures, but this human showed us something different. True strength is the ability to bring together many strengths. Other delegates nodded, their different forms moving in agreement. Thelvox announced a new initiative, the Chen Protocols, guidelines for solving impossible problems through collaboration instead of individual achievement. Zix was given a position leading the new collaborative engineering team. When they announced his appointment, he looked at Sarah with gratitude shining in his eyes. "You were never weak, Zix," Sarah told him privately. "You just needed to see that your gifts were different, not lesser. Asking questions, listening to others, finding connections, these are forms of strength too." 3 days later, Sarah's ship departed for Earth. As Harmony Prime grew smaller in the viewport, she recorded a final message for the Galactic Council. "Humans are not the strongest species," she said. "We are not the smartest or most advanced, but we are very good at being part of something larger than ourselves. We are good at learning from others, at combining different ideas into new solutions. And sometimes, that is exactly what strength looks like." When Sarah arrived home, there was no grand parade, just her family waiting at the spaceport, her husband holding flowers, her daughter Emma bouncing with excitement. "Mama!" Emma ran to her, and Sarah caught her in a tight hug. "I brought you something," Sarah said, handing Emma a star chart from Harmony Prime. "It shows all the friends I made out there." That evening, they had a small birthday party. Just cake, presents, and laughter. Simple and perfect. Above Earth, stars shone in the night sky. Somewhere among them, on Harmony Prime, Zix looked up at his own sky, thinking about the human who had taught him what strength really meant. The question had been, is there truly no one strong enough? The answer was, we are, when we stand together.